Most companies talk about scale. Very few actually design it from the ground up, especially when work gets emotional, high stakes, and human. Today's guest doesn't just build systems. He builds the experience inside the systems, the standard, the infrastructure, and the invisible architecture that allows people to do their best work and be more human. We talk about AI. We talk about what you really need to know going into 2026 and 2027. The future is going to be a little bit rocky, but Coyne is an absolute monster when it comes to humans and technology and the intersection. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to Prime, real conversations in real estate.
Just personally, I was looking at the new Claude rollout. I was looking at the Gemini Ultra, which I signed up for last night because workspace is our backbone, right? And even to our conversation earlier on a couple months ago, where I'm like, I just need a CTO to help me integrate all of my things because I know what I want to do. I think Ultra is going to be able to do that as it gets better because it's got my email, it's got my calendar, it's got my drive. If I can plug in my MLS and a few other things, it's solving a lot of the things that I wanted to build, right? So.
Yeah, in ways that security is usually the last thing that people invite to the party.
Yeah.
And security usually doesn't bring anything to the potluck. It just brings disappointment and sadness. But when you've got sensitive data that it has access to, then AI is going to get to the cheese in the maze, however it needs to in order to achieve what it thinks is what you're asking it to do. Did you ever see the movie Bedazzled with Brendan Fraser and Elizabeth Hurley?
No, I didn't.
A guy basically, he makes a wish for something and then the devil appears in Elizabeth Hurley form and grants his wish to be famous and rich. And he wakes up and he's like a 7-foot tall star basketball player, but there were some trade-offs that he forgot to be specific about that made him regret it. So he asked for a correction and then he ended up in a different version of life where he had all the things that he asked for that time, but this time it was that he was like a Pablo Escobar kind of figure that also some trade-offs about. And the moral of it was that be grateful for human context understanding and contracts that need to account for all different kinds of things that you may not have thought of, but that AI is going to fill in the blanks where as a human we take for granted that if I ask you to go get a cup of coffee, please, if you're, or get me one, if you're already going to get coffee, you as a human are like, okay, what's safe is a black coffee with all the sides, the sugar that Coyne might want, maybe a couple different creamer options, but you're not going to assume to just do a bunch of different additives that I didn't ask for, right? Mm-hmm. And somebody who knows you really well, who understands the taxonomy of if no almond or oat milk, then 2% is okay, and if no Splenda, then stevia is good, and stuff like that. AI that knows you may understand what your preferences are that you've declared, but you may also end up with an Americano or a shot of whatever, like even Cuban coffee that's like this big because you didn't specify that you were looking for a full cup of coffee. So context engineering is important. It's getting better at that.
Yeah.
In terms of clarifying statements. But when you're building something that becomes a main line of tool in your business, like a line of business software, like LOBS, there are going to be things that it makes assumptions on in the background. There are going to be things that were security holes that if you've got sensitive data, including your own, great that Google Ultra has got access to your email and to your calendar and your YouTube searches and your Google searches, but what if it accidentally included ones that you didn't want it to and exposed them in ways that you didn't intend? It's like when you tell somebody, hey, bring that over here. No, use two hands. I didn't warn you that it was kind of lopsided on one of them and you couldn't just pick it up by the edge. This is the common sense understanding of physics of the world that we develop as humans, and that raising children, you kind of go through and you see like, yes, no, right. Wiping isn't just that action. You have to use the right amount of paper, but not too much. And you should flush before if it's, there's all this context that we build. AI is getting there. And even then we can vibe code cool things. We can build cool software. Is it going to be as secure as something that had actual engineers make sure that there were walls and a moat and gaiters and if it matters?
Yeah, I think the AI engineering portion that you just kind of dug into reminds me of when ChatGPT came out in the beginning. And one of the first things I noticed from the security standpoint was agents in the general agent community thinking I can upload an inspection report and it's going to break it down for me and tell me what to tell my client, and not realizing, well, okay, let's play this out. Let's play this out that something goes wrong in your transaction and the judge orders them to open up your AI and look at the conversation you had with the inspection report and see that you prompted it to make something that was a big deal not a big deal in your little chat conversation with it. And now you got subpoenaed, and now everybody knows that. And guess what? You're going to lose your license, or you're going to end up paying a massive fine. Also, dropping in agreements of purchase and sale with sensitive data into a platform that's using it to learn, and you don't realize you're not on an enterprise level account, and all that information is being shared within the ecosystem. And Johnny 123 Main Street's information, property, what they paid for the property, the conditions, their financing, like all that private information is now in the cloud, and you get subpoenaed. Well, guess what? Guess who's responsible for that data integrity? It was actually one of the first things that we did here early on when we were using chat agents, and we created an internal policy for these are the guardrails. This is what you can do. This is what you can't do. And now, again, you and I were speaking earlier about the advent of agentic AI, right? And people getting really excited about creating these agents and plugging it into all of their data and saying, no, go little minions and do the jobs. I'm like, no, like the amount of knowledge bases that we are creating around compliance in our industry, internal protocols, guardrails, like context, I actually think the next couple months are going to be more work in that capacity than it is just testing out the agents. I may have it do some small things like, hey, summarize my inbox and tell me what I need to know for the day. But that's a conversation with me and it to learn how to use the technology, because I do think it's going to matter in the future. But I think that's a great point around data security and context, because I don't think a lot of people think of AI that way, right?
Yeah, I think I would use the analogy, yes, it's easier than ever to file your own taxes, but nothing beats a fantastically creative CPA in terms of how to get the most out of that process. And anybody listening to me say that knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the answer though, right? Is I think you're going to have extremely passionate people about their craft with AI tools that are going to be able to do more with less fluff in the middle or grunt work. And
that's right.
You're really, really getting the creative side of them, because it's doing a lot of the heavy lifting that, I did one this morning actually, where I was doing some research on zoning and bylaws, and I know what the municipality's response is going to be, but I really wanted to do a comprehensive breakdown on one specific property, the zoning bylaw, what's allowed in terms of development on that site. But I'm still going to the human being at planning to cross-check everything too, and not make an assumption that we can do this, because it may hallucinate or it may misread the zoning bylaw and how it's actually applied. So I think humans with AI tools is going to be the future, right?
I mean, yes, that for humans with tools has been the future since stone tools, right? That's it. AI is just the latest version of that, and it's more sophisticated than a cudgel that you fashioned out of a branch or a rock. 70 to 80% of agentic workflows that are set up tend to fail.
Interesting.
People don't build in enough retry handling and different kinds of blocking or situations it runs into. API rate limits of different interconnected systems in terms of a server saying, you can't actually ask me for stuff 80 times a millisecond. The dependencies, like just because it's easier than ever to connect things, and it's easier than ever to have something kind of go into some degree of auto mode and go try stuff. The people who I'm talking to in that segment, that industry of like business automation and stuff like that, most companies don't really know what they want to automate, or if they do, they're automating a process that the assumption is being made that it's already a good process that's not broken in some which way. Mm-hmm. So taking like the way that you've been doing things, whether or not it's the best way to be doing them, and just making those things agentic isn't usually going to be enough. It requires you revisiting and rethinking why we do it this way, where humans in the loop make sense, right? And human judgment needs to come back into play. Where should the process deliberately stop itself and go to human review or QA, especially when you've got regulated aspects like you were just talking about? So then you go to the level of, well, old-fashioned, quote unquote, old-fashioned from a couple of years ago or a few years ago still has a place. Like robotic process automation, RPA, has been around for 20 plus years in terms of an industry segment, and places like McKinsey and Deloitte, all the way on down to random people that you can hire off of Reddit and YouTube to do it for you with things like Zapier, Make.com, even N8N now and stuff like that. Over and over again, what I hear and see these folks saying is not every single step of the process needs to have an LLM in it.
Mm-hmm.
Big difference, but like AI has become this all-encompassing term for a large language model.
Yeah.
But that's not really what we intended, right? So now you've got like AGI, artificial general intelligence. It's almost like when we had like HD, but HD wasn't enough, so we needed 4K. And like every time there's another jump in the spec because it wasn't extreme enough, So we're seeing that there's ability to revisit and automate existing aspects of process that LLMs might confuse or make more complicated. Like just because you can bring AI to the party doesn't mean that you should in every aspect. And what is that adding? And then there's so many models to choose from. I spoke to somebody who wanted our money, which happens a lot. Somebody who wanted our money for a software thing. They said, we use 200 models in our product. I said, bullshit. There's no way. Like you couldn't actively, like, what are you talking about? Like there's, so you also have these claims that you have to filter through.
That's so crazy.
And building quality assurance in, like the concept of like an AI operations center, like one of the new job descriptions of the future is going to be like agentic AI handler or gardener, or like some kind of like systems controller who's like operating in like the Matrix Zion, control bay in the chairs and the white light space, or some Minority Report thing that's like watching over the bots doing their thing. Who watches the watchers, right? Because if things are happening without your knowledge, the business is piling up these liabilities. As soon as legal or HR or compliance get involved, or somebody comes to audit, especially as you have legal pressure, which segues me to another layer of what you were just talking about. So New York State this month, and we're recording this January 2026, there's a bill being brought to the floor of the New York State Assembly that essentially is a fair housing accountability law when it comes to AI. And that brokerages would have to perform a self-audit once or twice a quarter to essentially be registering and checking and being able to report, if asked, that their custom AI or any use of AI internally is compliant with fair housing. Great on the surface until we get all the way to what seems to happen in every industry, that you're going to have a cottage industry pop up of AI auditors that come in and do the certification and compliance checks and different kinds of stuff. And then you have the school of thought, which is something that I helped write an opinion for Rebney to present in Albany, that AI as a utility, out of the 100,000 brokerages in the United States, because New York, usually the Southern District establishes precedent and it starts to trickle out other places. The 100,000 brokerages in the US, most of them can't really afford to do those kinds of compliance. The margins are already tight. You know that. Like it's already a struggle, the split wars and different kinds of stuff. Now, in order to use freaking ChatGPT or Claude or anything, you mean I have to? Well, no, it's so murky. And the interpretation of how this will pour down. So I argued, I said, well, it's a utility. It's water coming out of a tap. I'm making a reasonable calculation that AI is already not racist and is already compliant with fair housing, and except for Grok. We all know Grok is a different story. But I'm assuming that reasonably what's coming out of the tap has already been filtered at the water treatment plant and doesn't have contaminants and doesn't have blah, 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 blah. And that any modifications we're making, unless they're overtly shaping it to be something that is in violation of that, why aren't we putting the pressure upstream on the water treatment plant to filter the water properly, or to not allow it to violate these kinds of things? If it's so important, the responsibility shift onto like the little guy is going to be a hardship for a lot of people. So that kind of just full circle is, not only are these things powerful, some of them are more well understood than others, especially in the business unit in terms of where the money, focus, and time should go. And also the way that it's being regulated or lack thereof, whether it's federally or on the state level. that's going to take shape and is going to affect all this. So you have to decide, are you building for the future in a way that you think the landscape is going to continue to exist much the way it does now? Are you building in flexibility? How many eggs are you putting in that basket? Mm-hmm. It's a complicated conversation where every business has to assess for itself where it wants to move the risk around to.
Yeah, you're not wrong in that statement. I remember I was on a road trip with my wife years ago, and we were talking about something we wanted to create internally at the brokerage. And it was a software as a catch-all for all the different softwares that we were subscribed to. But I was like, you know what, Shannon, like when I think about it, it's really, you have Google and you have Facebook, right? Like those are the two kind of behemoths that are fighting it out. And there's other companies that are obviously involved as well too. But look at those two, and I'm like, with what they're building, I know, like, say I looked at Google, Facebook, Follow Up Boss, Brokerman, like all these different companies, really they're going to provide APIs and constantly working on solutions for their individual product. By the time we actually develop anything, the money it's going to take us to do it, it's going to be obsolete. Like if they change how the infrastructure of Google works or how Facebook works or Follow Up Boss sells to Zillow, which it did, all the money that we're going to spend on development is going to go away. We're not in the software business. We're in the real estate business. So let's look at all of the suite of services that we use and what's the 80-20 rule? Like what is the 20% of effort that we're making that's bringing 80% of the income? And it's a combination of new school and old school real estate. Like a lot of the actual success we have is just being a human being, going into a coffee shop, talking to people on the phone, combined with technology that allows us to do that at scale. Where our head is at with AI is the same thing. I can spend 80% of my day working on AI, and it is very exciting. Instead, what you said, I think, was so key that I want to double tap on is stepping back and trying to simplify it, because rather than sitting down and saying, I'm going to have it do every single step of the process because it's going to save me time, what I found was early on, instead of creating one massive prompt that was every step of what I wanted the final outcome to be, it was much more effective to refine the individual prompts and cut 10 prompts down to 3 and do a whole heck of a lot of human input at the beginning. Let it do the 80%, and then the last 10% is human. And it's enabled me to really be a lot more creative, get rid of the stuff that is just clerical, cross-check work, whatever, but be more human using AI versus in the beginning where it was just, man, I'm going to get this to do everything that I need it to do because it's just, that's what everybody else is doing. I think that's gone. I think a lot of people are realizing that simple is much better than complex, right?
I think that not just the models have been adjusted in terms of the output getting different, whether you want to argue higher quality or not. Gemini 3 is definitely the one that is by all benchmarks and accounts the one that is on raw input output. It seems to be the leader in the clubhouse right now. Maybe it lacks some features and integrations of the others, but Google is definitely set up in a position to win. Everything from they make their own chips. They're not reliant on NVIDIA's supply chain the way everybody else is. Wow. They've been optimizing their TPU chips for many years, the Tensor cores, for this purpose. They're in charge of the compute. They already have everybody's data, like all different kinds of stuff. Like they're positioned really well. Yeah. We'll always associate ChatGPT with AI because they were like the one that made it, like the Q-tip and the Google search and stuff, whatever. But when you look at the landscape of the model outputs, the inputs have also changed in terms of the requirements to get quality out of them. Like the AI companies, or the large language model companies, I should say, they've realized how to adjust based on, they're not just training the model for output, they're also training the bot on how to understand the inputs better. Mm-hmm. So it used to be you had to follow something like the craft method, which is like context, role, action, format, and target audience. And as long as you established all that, you were pretty good and it would do a single output. Now it's gotten pretty good. I used to have to coach people, whether from the stage or one-to-many or one-to-one. Hey, have it ask you clarifying questions. Whatever you put in, make sure to add, like, ask me questions to make sure that we fully understand before continuing. And it started to do that on its own. It starts to ask these clarifying questions a lot of the time, which is really good. One of the exercises I used to love, I still think it's a good one for anybody to follow. Ask me 30 questions about me or my business or this problem or this project or whatever it is, to make sure we fully understand before moving forward. You will always, whether it's humans or AI that has been programmed by humans to try to simulate human thinking, which is why it's like that, are going to benefit from having way more of that context about the goal, who it's for, what, all that stuff. It does add up. I'm actually helping a buddy of mine ghostwrite his book using AI, like ChatGPT in pro research mode, on the mountain of stuff that he's generated for over 20 years that he's been coaching people. He used to coach me. He's who introduced me to Ryan Serhant in the first place 11 years ago. And it's wild that if you help it understand and give it that role of what the goals and the outputs need to be before you have it start cranking out results for you, something as simple as an email or a post. And I like the custom GPTs that ChatGPT did. We're starting to see other companies catch up, not just on MCP server, not just on different kinds of skills like Claude developed and connecting to different kinds of stuff. These things become table stakes very quickly in like the arms race and like the AI war of like what features are considered parity and table stakes. So if Gemini gets to the point where you can have a more simplified version of a custom GPT because it's already trained on a lot of your data or context, that would be pretty sick. I think the most valuable tool out of all the things that exist is still a hyper-personalized LLM, whether it's a custom GPT or otherwise, that you don't have to constantly start over re-explaining yourself about specific aspects of either you, your business, or your goals, even for the year.
Yeah. And they do have that now. And what the custom GPTs were previously, and I'd have different bots for different things. I had one that was like, what's for dinner? And it was all of our dietary requirements, allergies, preferences. And I would literally tell it like, it's 4:30. I'm going to be at the grocery store and I'd like to eat around 6:15. It's me, Shannon, and my daughter. And, this is what we want to eat tonight. Give me 5 recipes. And it would actually go into that knowledge database. It has like 3 chefs that we really like. And it would pump out some recipes and like unbelievable, right? I use ChatGPT forever. Our backbone's workspace. So I'm shifting, and I actually have ChatGPT and Gemini open at the same time. And Gemini has been able to have these things called gems, which you can actually plug into knowledge databases, which are single documents that you can update live.
Yeah, that's Notebook LM, like echoed inside of Gemini. That's like where the experiment of Notebook LM kind of showed its face. There are some deltas and differences, and please continue. But yes, they're definitely getting there.
I want to know the differences, but there was one other feature too under personalization, where you can go in there and update the knowledge database about me specifically. This is the company I run. This is my org structure. This is like all of the things. I don't like it when you do this in the outputs. Please do this. And you can update that memory similar to what you can do in the ChatGPT memory. What is the difference between the Notebook LM gems and say the bots in ChatGPT?
Man, the easiest way, that could change by the time this airs, by the way.
Sure.
It's like we're still in the like there's a new best one every 6 weeks era of AI.
As of 10:56 on January 15th, 2026.
Yeah, exactly. Custom GPTs are more mature in the way that you can also be like a developer of them is one of the ways that there's a key difference for me. So if we build one for an agent, we don't have visibility into what they're saying, what their conversations are, any of that. But we do have visibility into how frequently they're using it, like how many chats they've had, for example. Gives us an idea if they need outreach, if they need, additional whatever, just a boost, a reminder, some starter prompts, different kinds of things. That can be helpful. As far as the way that ChatGPT's memory works, it seems to be something that in my own experimentation is a little more egalitarian in the balance of the way that it considers the knowledge base of the GPT and across the entire memory of it, as well as supplementing with web search. I'm finding that the gems are a little bit more contained and constrained, maybe for intentional reasons. Like Notebook LM is like really hardcore about like it is going to use what you put there as a knowledge source, and that's it. And that's what it's designed to do. It does what it says on the tin. That's fine. I think that we're in like the Batman's utility belt phase. That if you're in business and you've attached your horse to just a single cart, that's a mistake. And I think that you need to not be like completely fluent across all of these things. But I think they all need to be in the toolkit. Kind of like how I thought that streaming was going to replace my cable subscription and it was going to cost me less. But now I'm fucking paying more for all my streaming services combined, than I was for the cable box. Yeah. The AI tool, Google Ultra, you're paying $250, $275 a month?
No, it's $144 Canadian a month
on promo.
I think so, because of the amount of accounts that I have on the back end too.
Fair. Yeah. So like for an average Joe south of the border, I guess the tariffs on Gemini are higher. I don't know. But whether it's the ChatGPT Pro for $200 a month, or Gemini Ultra for north of $200 a month, and it just starts to get really high for a business, and having to choose long term, man, I think it would be a mistake to entirely build your business on one. Like we saw one of our competitors did like an enterprise deal with ChatGPT. Good for them.
Yeah.
But that's also like the next time if somebody says at the table, hey, we're built on Google, and Google's one got pretty good. And you know how ChatGPT is more of a Microsoft thing? Well, our enterprise deal is for 3 years. We have to go kick rocks. I don't know. So it can be a real challenge where your commitments go.
100%. I think that's a great point, because I was looking at N8N yesterday. I was looking at Claude's new rollout. There's some pretty cool things that Claude is doing too. And, being able to speak the language is important, and also knowing where to deploy the resources. And if I'm Ryan Serhant and I have a Ryan Coyne on my team, like you, who's obsessed with the technology aspect and the integrations of humans and systems, and more than just AI, right? I think from what I've gotten to know about you, people will look at you and be like, oh, he's the AI guy, just go to him and he can show you how to use them. Like, no, like he can show you the balance between the organic and the digital systems, and like the integrations of the two. For somebody like myself that doesn't have somebody like you on our team, how would you tell me to like mitigate my time investment, or how would I hire somebody like you without, I know you're probably like a couple $1,000,000 a year, without the salary ability that Ryan Serhant has to pay?
Somebody tell him that, for starters.
Easy raise, Ryan.
Yeah. No. In all seriousness, I think that people make the mistake of thinking it's less of a human story than it actually is. Mm-hmm. It was designed by humans for other humans to solve human problems. I think that we get caught up in thinking about the AI of it all at all. I just, over and over again, I end up helping people zoom out to analyze and think about the exact same situation or the exact same problem, and break it down to its fundamental pieces, including the humans that are in it and what those people are thinking, feeling, and what their goals are. Like, for example, our finance department, right? Our director of accounting, she came to me and she said, how can AI help accounting in a way that doesn't threaten the calculator, in a way that doesn't make the books themselves a risk, right? Because we use this thing called RAMP. It's like our accounts payable thing, and like it does employee credit cards, and it, we pay our vendors through it with ACH. And like if you forward an invoice to it, or a receipt that you scan in a restaurant, like I do this thing where I'll take somebody to lunch or whatever, and I get a text from the thing saying, send me a photo of your receipt, and it scans that. AI is at the party there in safe ways, but where can it help optimize the whole thing? So I interviewed her for a little over an hour one day, asking her all about the challenges, the friction, the opportunities, the different people on the team and what they do, to what degree she trusts each one of them to do certain things that are in their responsibility set, everything. Just a list of questions that I've worked on and standardized, but I know are important to me. And AI can even help you with the questions to ask if you're not sure. At the end of that, take the transcript, run it through a special recipe to extract, also asking it for extracting nuance and subtext of all the things that they didn't say, because we're clunky with our communication. One of the reasons we pay attention and pay respect to artists, respect and attention are currencies, that's why we say pay, is because they are better than the rest of us at taking the things from the amygdala and our feelings that get translated through our prefrontal cortex, where we have to choose from the 2 million words in the English language that none of us have a vocabulary that includes all of them, into how we think and feel about ideas, and hope and pray to God that the person we're talking to is going to understand what we're thinking and feeling because of the words that we chose. Mm-hmm. When you think about it like that, it's a freaking miracle that we made it this far, right? That we how to understand each other, let alone all the different languages. So pay attention to
over misinterpreted language.
Yeah, one word, the comma. Let's eat grandma, like the comma, like that's the same thing. So we pay attention to artists because they're so good at turning their thoughts and feelings into expression that then we can reverse engineer with our senses back into the feelings the other direction. Yeah. That's the magic of art. So to me, it's also an art to get down to the core of what somebody isn't saying, where the opportunities lie sometimes in the details between what they did say, And if you end up with a real good analysis of like what exists now, what the opportunities, like the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that you would do for a marketing exercise, but for a department's opportunity to get more efficient, well, then all of a sudden you're able to attack individual components of that. I can go back to her and say, hey, can you just throw on Loom and record your workflow on this specific thing for, I don't care how long it takes, an hour, so that we can then use Loom's AI feature, which will turn a recording into an SOP with screenshots and how-tos and yada, yada. And we feed that in also. And then we ask AI to tell us how to automate this. And we can hand it off to an engineer if we have to for this one section, because we now all of a sudden have a risk analysis of where is that 80-20 rule hiding. But you have to ask all those things about the people that are involved too. Because if part of the thing that you're automating is because somebody in the department is shitty at something, well, that's maybe not something to automate. Maybe that was, So I really do think it comes down to first principles and basics of understanding the why. And she ended up, one of the things that was her favorite part was the accounting department like manifesto. That was essentially the why everything that's important to her is important to her, and ways to understand and explain these things. And I think that the advice that I would give to anybody watching about how to do this, typically what I find, whether I'm casually talking to somebody or I'm coaching somebody, even if it's only once or twice, I think that people's relationship to leadership needs to change if their relationship to AI is going to change. Leadership is about changing the way that people think. Management is about changing what people do. If you only ever focus on changing what people do, you'll only ever be a manager. You don't want to be an AI manager in terms of focusing on what it'll do. Worse, you'd be an AI micromanager and be a slave to the thing. Nobody wants that either. But if you can get more locked into the mission and the vision and the why of something about either your whole business or why you do this, or what the AI really needs to solve as far as a problem or goal that it helps you get to, and you spend time working on the way that you can invite other people's perspectives and inputs and the way that you're communicating yours. Great leaders will communicate that mission, that vision, and that why in different languages, not literally, but in different ways to get across to different kinds of people who have different learning and interpretation styles. I think that almost anybody can be bought into something if they have a leader that is multilingual in the way to convey the importance of it. If you do that, then all of a sudden you're able to communicate with the people around you on the problem solving differently. You're able to explain the different reasons why something matters or why it's a challenge to AI differently too. Because we take it for granted. You were saying before that you explained that these prompts, you're taking 10 prompts down to 3. Mm-hmm. You're taking yourself for granted just because you're great at what you do. We're so quick to devalue ourselves in how wonderfully capable we are as humans to be building in and taking that context for granted, and the way that you, as somebody who's a gifted communicator, is able to translate it and communicate that and convey it to not just humans, but also AI designed by humans. I think that is the biggest opportunity for people. It's clarity with each other and with the bots, and you'll have better outputs.
Yeah, I agree with that statement wholeheartedly. I appreciate you saying the nice words about the communication piece. It's funny because I still don't feel like I am, right? Like, here's an example where I try and write on a daily basis so that I can, like, Naval is a great example of it. Like, how can you say something very complex in as little amount of words as possible to really get to the heart of what you are trying to say, right? Being an effective communicator is such a fun skill to refine. I mean, you on stage is one of my favorite things as well. Like, there's so many little things that you do that can get missed by people unless they're paying attention. And one you actually did on this episode is you said, let's eat grandma, without the comma, or let's eat grandma. Like, you saying that so quickly, making a point around effective communication and making sure you're clear is something that I think at the heart of this entire episode, even though we're having a very technical conversation, that one piece, I think, becomes a removal of a bottleneck for everything else, right? I think what you talked about in terms of creating clarity with the human beings and also understanding where they're at, because their aptitude or interest in AI may not be the same as yours or mine, and they may not get a kick out of trying to be on the bleeding edge of stuff. And that there's probably the 80% of the consumers that are using it that just need to understand, okay, how's it operating right now? How should I be using it to get to whatever the effective dose they're trying to get out of that specific tool? where there's a carpenter who's going to spend a lot of time on millwork and with saws and chisels and stuff like that. And there's other people that literally they're going to maybe do it as a hobby or from time to time, but really to get that table that they absolutely love, they're just going to go hire the guy who's obsessed with it, right?
Yeah. Yes. I think that passion is a big component for sure. You don't have to love AI. Like he'll be insulted if he hears my best friend in the whole world is one of the more anti-AI people that there are.
Yeah.
He's very counterculture. I won't even give the description of him to put it in people's minds, but he's very, very counterculture in every way. And he's like a very 40-year-old man shouts at the clouds about how AI is ruining and he's a graphic designer and an artist.
Of course.
Who has one of the biggest gripes with what AI has been trained on and the pressures it's put on people like him and his industry in different kinds of ways. And I'll say to him sometimes, oh, just ask chat, and he'll say, no, just like the Luddites. The Luddites is not just a derogatory term for people who refuse to get with the times, but it's something that also there was a group of people that were, anti-technologists for being replaced. You know where the word sabotage comes from?
No, I do not.
So Dutch shoes, wooden shoes, are called sabot.
Mm-hmm.
And the Dutch East India Company was one of the largest organizations in the ever, like by adjusted for inflation. They were the Amazon of forever, of that era. And they had factories with factory workers and machines that were wooden and or steam, whatever. Like the factory workers would take their shoes, sabot, and throw them into the machines to gum them up and to stop production because they felt like their jobs were being come for.
Wow.
So we have this intense moment where so many white collar jobs are feeling the exact same thing that the auto workers on the production lines of Detroit felt when those robots first showed up 25 plus years ago, that are now bartenders on our cruise ships for our entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
The robotic revolution is also going to be a component of this, not just where the AI lives inside the business or that we talk to, but the AI that is taking care of our parents because we're too busy to go visit them.
Mm-hmm.
Or any other aspect of that we might, I'm friendly with the guy who's in charge of real estate for Waymo. I met him in the airport. I said, oh, so what do you do? He says, I do real estate for a tech company. What do you? I said, I kind of do tech for a real estate company. Very like Reese's peanut butter cup moment. And we talked about driverless cars for a while. Like this is all, it's happening, whether we like it or not. The question is, are we changing our own thinking and the thinking of the people who are serving this with us? And are we voting with our dollars? Because that's the real way that things happen, is where there's financial support for different kinds of things. You'll get away with, like, if you're Microsoft right now, you'll get away with trying to make Copilot happen for maybe 5 years before somebody says, like, I'm sorry, Satya, it didn't hit the way that you thought, unless there's some miracle. But like how Xbox has kind of fallen from grace.
For sure.
The thinking needs to evolve. How do you and your business get so locked into your why, into your messaging, that you can be Apple and get away with teasing Apple intelligence that you still haven't delivered, and nobody even holds it against you because they already love your brand so much?
I was going to say, it's all their brand, right? People are they'll overlook that other piece too. I think earlier on in the conversation, like, man, how did humans even make it here? And I can tell you the answer in my mind is adaptation, right? Like the one thing we're able to do that a lot of other species have really struggled with over the years is adapt to changing environments, changing real estate marketplaces, technology. And I find the people that have been winning are the one that aren't like, no, this is what I did. This is what got me here. And I'm not changing anything. I'm on ChatGPT Enterprise. I'm never going to anything else, right? Like just looking at the landscape of how you're interacting and realizing, like, putting the humans first and then seeing, like, what do the humans actually need? What are the tools available to me? And not being like, even content, right? Like changing how I did content over the last 6 months to what my people actually want. It's not the stuff that I love the most, but my audience loves it. And we've grown 126% in the last 30 days because I made that change and I wasn't sold on what got me here. Right. And I think adaptation is going to be a big thing that people have to get comfortable with, or change what you're doing entirely. So,
yeah. And that approach can be what you change. Garbage in, garbage out. You don't put time into training people. who weren't taught, like that's going to not work out super well. If you don't put time into what you're even asking AI to help you with and why, if you don't really know, like I do this a lot with agents where I'll ask them, what's your unique value proposition? Like why should I work with you and no other real estate agent in the world?
Mm-hmm.
And then they answer, if they have an answer, if they, because either because it's the pressure of like Ryan Serhant's guy is asking, or it's maybe they have their own idea of me before we speak, or our own whatever. I could know somebody for years and still they stammer sometimes. I usually get something that's within 90% of people's like the same answer.
Many answers. Yeah.
Until we go through the exercise of, right, so tell me why you love doing this. Okay, can you think back to a time earlier in life where somebody made you feel this way or that way, and kind of like try to connect it in different kinds of ways? What do you love about where you live? Oh, okay. And oh, wow. So you grew up in a different area and it was really tough. So you really like helping people discover what you did about that place. You're like an ambassador, different kinds of ways. Like all of a sudden, by the end of that conversation, it's like, oh, wow, I really like helping people find a place they can also build family legacy and yada, yada. As a person who didn't grow up with a family myself in a stable environment, and having built that and knowing how hard it is to build it, I want to make it easier for other people.
Yep.
Fucking boom. Then all of a sudden, like Matt Lionetti talks about and others that we both adore in terms of the storytelling elements and how to get to the authenticity in them. AI would benefit from that too, in terms of the way that it helps you make decisions about your business, knowing what your North Star is, and it all feels more authentic. One of your former guests that you had on this show, I'm not going to say who it was, they texted me at 11:38 p.m. once, early last year. I just remembered, I looked it up to be able to say this to you. And they said, can I ask you a deep question, full transparency? That's a lonely text to get at 11:38 p.m. I said, go for it. They said, has the situation with this or anything therein changed or altered your idea of me or my leadership and my role or as a person? That's heavy.
Yeah.
So I said, no, full transparency. I think everybody around me has three things. Number one, an agenda, however innocent or not innocent.
Of course.
Two, a lack of deep enough self-awareness that would help them navigate things in a way that's more objective. And three, they're human, which means they're fucking stupid, silly, scared, fragile, lonely, blame avoidant, fear infested, dopamine addicted survivalists who struggle with breakthroughs of emotional maturity and accountability for how our actions impact ourselves and others. How we show up to others and what our intentions were are typically miles apart. And if not for procreation being something that either nature is sneaky or God has a sense of humor, most relationships wouldn't last. Mm-hmm. That was my response. Yeah. So I think the more work that we do on being aware of our business, ourselves, the roles in it, the existing challenges, and like businesses can be broken down into like production, sales, ops, management, marketing, finance, quality assurance. Like there's like 6 or 7 essential components. Do we understand them well enough to have AI be helping us effectively? I would argue that most people, the answer is no.
Yeah, I genuinely think too, as you were talking about the agent, that you asked them, what's your UVP? I'm like, oh, I'm a full service real estate agent. Oh, I answer my phone at any point in time. I put my clients first. Oh, apparently I'm thumbs upping and thumbs downing on the live. That boilerplate, if you can get to the heart of it, right? Or that person that asked you that question, you can have a real human interaction, the depth of the quality that you're going to get into from the conversation point forward, the self-discovery, that you don't have to put this facade that we're all just perfect. Business is business. The more human you can be, the happier I think you'll be in the work that you're doing, and the more you're going to find those opportunities to adapt. So I think one of the most insightful things you said.
One of the most recent examples that I had, and I won't name them, but one of our agents booked time with me blindly. Like they arranged it, and I hopped on. I hadn't had a one-on-one with them in quite some time. Yeah. And they started out by saying, hey, Coyne, I wanted some advice about how AI or any system could help me with my follow-up and keeping track of it. Because I really haven't done any in so long, and I feel like I need a system to get started. And I said to them, system's not your problem. What do you mean? I said, you have a confidence issue in that you don't think that you're worthy of these people's time, and you don't think that you have something valuable to call them to say. And she said, what do you mean? How did you know that? we've been on the phone for 30 seconds. And I was like, because I can hear it in your voice and I can see it on your face a little bit. Even if you didn't realize that or think about it before this, you would have a serious problem to solve and really need a system because of the follow-ups you were already doing to support that growth versus this mental trap you've built for yourself that you need the system to exist first before you can get started, because the second one is a confidence problem.
Yeah.
How did you know? Because humans have more in common than we think. So what AI ended up helping with is the value in what to say and the overall mindset reframes for how to go into those conversations. And just like in the terrible Justice League movie with, where Flash says to Batman, I don't know how to save all these people. And Ben Affleck turns to him and says, just save one person. Don't make 50 phone calls today. Just make one. And use AI as your partner to get to the bottom of what will make you feel like it's worth somebody's time to even call them at all. And as soon as you've gotten more than one follow-up, then all of a sudden a system beyond a simple to-do list is justified. But people are so tempted in today's technology era to just sign up for all the stuff that we get FOMO from Instagram telling us that our life is going to be destroyed and we're leaving millions of dollars on the table unless we sign up for this new CRM. You need Fixer.ai to manage your email, and you need Fellow to tell you this, and dude, most successful agents I ever met in my entire life were not using those things. They were following up, following through, following back with discipline. And that's why I work for that guy.
Coyne, you're a beautiful human being. You're such a nice intersection of, again, understanding the people and the systems, not just the systems. This conversation was definitely not just about technology. It was about care, clarity, and intentional design at scale. Appreciate you sharing how real leadership looks behind the scenes. If you're watching and listening to this episode, feel free to share it out with somebody that you think would benefit from it. And Coyne, I would talk to you for hours. Hopefully I'll get you on another episode next time in person so I can give you a big hug. I appreciate you very much, brother.
Dude, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure as always. You are the man, and I'll be back anytime you'll have me. Thank you.